call the meeting to order. And we open our meetings with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. God of justice and mercy, we know that you are with us at all times and in all places, if only we turn to you in faith. And so we turn to you now, seeking your continued blessings on those of us who have chosen public service, as well as those members of our community who are with us tonight to join us in our deliberations and decision-making. We ask that you give all of us patience and a commitment to respect and to listen to each other. For the members of this commission, help us always be mindful that we are public servants. Help us to hear with our hearts and to think clearly and reasonably. Help us to have the vision to look at the issues before us with wisdom and the determination to do what is best, even if it's not easy. Guide us in all we do to work for the common good. Loving Creator, we pray all these things in the name of Jesus and all that is holy. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have the roll call?
Commissioner Buck. Commissioner Kirkwood. Here. Commissioner Wilcox. Commissioner Surbeck. Commissioner Burton.
Yes.
Chair Hugendijk.
Here.
Commissioner Owens.
Here.
Commissioner Sands.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Now, at this point, I'm going to ask you, everyone to turn off their cell phones. Me included. Okay, do we have a staff report on the Board of County Commissioners' actions?
None today.
Okay. Do we have anything on the consent agenda? Okay.
We do not.
Citizen comments. This is a point in time in which a citizen can speak to the Planning Commission regarding anything that's not on the agenda for tonight. So if there's something you'd like to talk to us about, this is the time to do it. Okay. If you would like to state your name and address, and you basically have about 3 minutes.
Sounds good. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Rita Ruderman, XL Energy, 1800 Larimer, Denver, 80202. I'm just going to read a brief statement and then get out of your hair. As you know, in March of 2021, XL Energy announced Colorado's Power Pathway and immediately began planning a robust engagement effort with community leaders and landowners to identify potential routes for this new infrastructure. In recent months, there has been an unusually high amount of misinformation about the project circulating in the community. We felt it important to provide you and your community with direct resources and accurate data to address this misinformation. We hope the following provides clarity on 3 key issues that have been raised in recent public forums. Regarding the benefits, the pathway's new backbone electric transmission loop will benefit the entire region, not just Metro Denver, by enabling energy development, boosting tax revenues to local schools and governments, providing a new source of lease income for landowners, and delivering increased electric reliability. Electric cooperatives and municipal utilities will have access to Colorado's Power Pathway. Even Coloradans who don't receive electric service directly from XL Energy will benefit from a strong, robust, reliable regional electric grid. The project's benefits resemble other infrastructure like railroads and new highways. We may not always use every road in our areas, but they're all there for when we need them. XL Energy operates power plants and electric infrastructure across the state, providing electricity to 1.5 million homes and businesses directly and on a wholesale basis to other utilities. We have operated in Colorado for more than 150 years, and we will be here for decades to come. Our commitment to this state cannot be overstated. Regarding House Bill 22-1104, the recently passed Power Lines Trail Bill does not require power line trails within transmission corridors, just that Xcel Energy notify local government of the project and potential to construct a trail and consider a trail if asked to do so by a local government. Landowners do not have to agree to a new trail on their property, and the trail entity would be required to handle insurance issues, not landowners. Regarding our community engagement efforts, we have worked hard to inform landowners, local officials, and other stakeholders of Colorado's Power Pathway and seek their input on this important project. We have sent hundreds of thousands of mailings to landowners, and we have advertised in media throughout the project areas. There are multiple ways for community members to connect with us. Through our website at coloradospowerpathway.com, via email at coloradospowerpathway@xlenergy.com, and via our phone number at 1-855-858-9037. Xcel Energy has scheduled additional open houses in August in the new Segment 5 Eastern Review area in eastern Elbert County and western Lincoln County. These open houses are intended for landowners and members of the public in the Eastern Review area to have direct access to engage with the project staff and to gather their feedback on the potential additional route options. At the appropriate time, we will be prepared to discuss in detail our community engagement and siting process with the Commission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can you do us a favor, please?
Sure.
Print that up and send it so we can
Absolutely. So we provided a copy of the letter to the Board of County Commissioners last week in the hearing with the clerk, but we can send an email so that the Commission has their own copy. Happy to do so.
appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, citizen comments are closed. Next item on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from July 5th. Do we have any discussion on those minutes? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve them. Okay, somebody like to make a motion to approve it?
I'll move the approval of the minutes from the draft of the minutes from the previous meeting.
I second it. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so now we're going to open the public hearing process. These matters require this body to conduct a quasi-judicial hearing, which means the body must find facts and base its decision upon the application of the adopted regulation, standards, and criteria, and the competent, substantial, and material evidence received during this hearing. So with that in mind, all testimony must be competent, on topic, and not repetitious. So, on the public hearing process, we have two items that need to be continued. To August 2nd, so we'll need motions on the first one to continue it.
I'll move we continue item SU 22-0005 to the next meeting in August 2nd.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that we continue RZ-21-0049 to the August 2 meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that brings us to the third item, which is Huck rezone case RZ-21-0049. And we have a staff presentation on that.
Good evening, commissioners and guests. This is the Huck rezone, RZ220013. My name is Matthew. I'm a land use planner with Community and Development Services presenting tonight. Again, this is a request for a rezoning, primarily agricultural 2, A2, to agriculture residential at a location of 350-55 County Road 17, Elizabeth. And generally speaking, the location is just north of the town of Elizabeth on County Road 17. To outline a little bit, the landowner and applicant is John Huck. He is present tonight. Concurrent review also for a minor plat, MP 220014, will be decided upon the approval of this rezoning by the Board of County Commissioners. A pre-application to outline the process that we held with the applicant. Pre-application was held on December 16th of last year. Community meeting was held with approximately 1 or 2 attendees on January 25th of 2022. And a formal application was submitted for review with Community and Development Services on March 24th of this year. The Planning Commission date that we have is tonight, July 19th, and this application will be heard by the Board of County Commissioners on August 10th. I can attest that noticing has been completed in accordance with the zoning and subdivision regulations. So I'm looking at the zoning map. We have a wide variety of zone districts within the area. Generally speaking, with the close proximity to the town of Elizabeth, we have a wide variety of densities in proximity. When we start seeing some of these larger parcels in the area, that's in proximate distance to the running creek bed, the watershed there, where the subject property abuts it gently on the western edge. And generally speaking, there's a wide variety of subdivisions from Saddlewood and Bonnie Ridge that are in very close proximity or more or less across County Road 17 from the subject property. And in general, this, I'll touch on it a little bit in the coming slides, but this is a part of a 2-lot subdivision that was created some time ago, about 1997, between the current applicant and his neighbor, splitting their property into 2 30-acre lots. The other applicant in that particular situation had come back approximately 2 years ago to subdivide again, similar to the proposal that we're hearing today. So I'm looking at the aerial map. Because of the running creek on the west end of the property here, there's not a lot of development that we have in proximity to the floodplain there. And in general, zooming in here just a little bit, the existing residence of the applicant is very close to County Road 17. And upon the subdivision and rezoning approvals, the lot will be split relatively in half, where the applicant will look to build a second residence and have that existing residence up for sale. And in looking at some of the site specifics, we do have the floodplain here on the west. I have a handful of details here that are relatively pertinent to this case. In general, that this rezoning area is approximately 30 acres, zoned A2. Pursuing AR is what I believe to be a very good request for this particular property, given the fact that the floodplain is on the western edge of the property. The remaining lot will be approximately 19 acres in size, which would meet the standards of the AR zone district, and given some of the site specifics, makes sense for these site conditions with the floodplain there as well. In general, the access will be shared for both of these lots along the northern side of this lot, proposed Lot 1A up here, pretty much utilizing the same driveway entrance that the existing residence currently has. And as I touched on before, the subdivision will ultimately be an amendment to the original Smith-Huck plat. So this will be an opportunity for Lot 1 to be split into these 2 separate parcels, or 2 separate lots, pardon me, upon approval of this rezoning to the appropriate density. In looking at some of the referrals that were completed, you might have found within the referral packet, Planning Commissioners, that not enough water supply information was provided by the time of the first referral. The applicant worked with his engineer to be able to provide documentation to look into the augmentation plan that had been completed prior and also put a water supply for each of the proposed lots with a little bit more detail than before. The Elizabeth Fire Protection District, although I do not have it conditioned for approval of the rezoning, the traditional fire flow requirements, we will have that conditioned with the subdivision, which I believe is the more applicable request to have that condition tied to. And in looking at Core Electric Cooperative, there were certain easements that they requested to have included on the plat that has found its way on the rezone exhibit as well. In general, all other comments had been addressed during the review of this application. So in looking at the review criteria for a rezoning application, we have 6 criteria, A through F, that I'll walk through here with you. Criteria A is whether the proposed rezoning conforms and is consistent with the comprehensive plan. This is a statement that I'll give more often than not with some of these smaller subdivision proposals, typically agriculture to AR, also applicable in A2 to AR as well, that we are adding a slight density increase on the subject property. And in looking at something like that, there isn't a lot of goals or vision statements, I guess, that align with the comprehensive plan with this type of proposal, other than the general vision statement that says that we need to encourage residential growth. And in an area like this, outside of Elizabeth, we feel that this location is appropriate for this density increase. And in looking at the surrounding land uses, as I just touched on, we have a wide variety of subdivisions in the area, whether that be Saddlewood or Bonnie Ridge immediately across the street. There's a wide variety of density approached here. And some of the properties that have yet to be developed that are abutting the running creek, there's still significant acreage and frontage on either County Road 13 or 17 to do the same as well. So in looking at the provision of public services, ultimately, upon approval of both applications, there will be only one new created lot here, and the development of a new well and septic system, only one. We don't believe that this will have an adverse impact on public services based on the referral comments that we've received from Public Health and the Division of Water Resources. And in looking at an adverse impact to the environment, we were not provided any comment from the Kiowa Conservation District that would indicate that there would be any adverse impact to the environment. And in looking at the general density increase, we believe that that is a reasonable comment from them. In looking at traffic congestion, with the addition of one lot on this property, the Public Works Department did not believe that a traffic analysis was needed given this minor density increase, and it is believed through that review process that there will not be an additional burden to the existing road system, and improvements are not being required as a part of this application. And in general, looking at the rezoning in terms of an impact to health, safety, and welfare, staff has found through a comprehensive review that there is no adverse impact to health, safety, or welfare based on our individual review, based on the zoning regulations, and also from the comments that we've received from our referral agencies. With that in mind, staff would like the Planning Commission to find the following: that the proposal is in general conformance with the Elbert County Comprehensive Plan, that the proposal meets the criteria for approval in the Elbert County zoning regulations, that the proposal is compatible with existing and allowable land uses in the surrounding area, that the proposal will not result in significant impact to the health, safety, and welfare of residents and landowners in the surrounding area. CDS recommends that the Planning Commission make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners to approve the Huck rezone, case number RZ220013, subject to the following conditions. Conditions being that the applicant will be required to remove the public hearing sign within 7 days of a board decision, that the rezoning will not be effective until fees are paid, conditions of approval are met, and the exhibit is recorded with the clerk and recorder, and that this recordation of the Mylar exhibits for the rezone to be completed within 180 days of the Board of County Commissioners' approval. And that will conclude my presentation.
Okay, let's see here. Let me just make sure. John, would you like to make any comments or additions to what has been presented? Okay, do we have any public comments? No? Okay. Then public comment is closed. And we don't need a rebuttal because there's no public comments. So we have a board-only discussion. Are there any comments?
I have a question. On Lot 1A, where that little flag piece is cut out, I assume that is where the landfill used to be?
That is correct. That is the old Elizabeth dump.
And is that, Greg, is that actually a lot at this point, or?
To my knowledge, it was created far before the applicant had gone through the initial subdivision process, that was zoned and subdivided at some point before the present ownership. And to my knowledge, and John can confirm this, that he retains ownership of that former dump site, but does not have that as a part of this application. It's something that more or less he'll be holding on to with no plans to develop.
But it is actually a lot.
It is. Upon the initial acquisition of the lot, and we bought 60 acres, my next-door neighbor and I.
I was just curious.
On subdividing, that was not a part of it, so I had asked the previous owner, which was Daryl Peggy Evans, what that was. They told me what it was. I felt like it was probably best left in perpetuity to not be touched, and I said I would be glad to take it and never use it again, and that's where we are.
Okay. I was just curious about how it might have been subdivided, but thank you.
Mr. Hogg, could we get your name and address for the record?
My current address is 35055 County Road 17. I live on the address that you see on Lot 1A.
Thank you.
Any other questions for him? Okay, any other comments?
Real quick, I noticed that on the, where you sent out the mailings, there were a bunch of respondents, well, 3 respondents by email. What were those comments? Do we have those as part of the record somewhere? Because I didn't see them in there.
Responses by email
Yep.
for public comment.
Yeah, there was the homeowner's response from the sign-in sheet. There were probably 3 respondents that said responded via email. Belinda Savell, Matthew Bourgeois, Gary Alsbrook, and I'm not sure if Michael Aversole actually made a comment or something. There's something scribbled there. Maybe he signed it. I don't know.
Both of I received 2 emails, and both were actually neighbors who, in a way, congratulated me and said, wish you luck. So they were really more of nature to say, we saw your community invite. We won't be attending. We wish you the best of luck. And that was pretty much both comments. We did have on that night a gentleman that came that was not a part of the community area that just wanted to know more about the process.
Yeah, it was more or less a cordial conversation, if I remember correctly.
Got it. Can we put those somewhere in the record?
Yes.
Those emails?
And if you need those, I'll send those on to you.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Questions? Okay. And I would entertain a motion for approval.
So I'll make a motion to approve the Huck rezone case RZ 210049
Did you say 21?
as recorded.
This one.
Oh, sorry, rezone 22006. Read the wrong number.
Yeah, I believe there was a typo on the staff report. The correct case number is up on the screen as we have it. It's 0013, not 0006.
We got it all over the place, don't we? So, in that case, I'll make a motion to approve case RZ 220013 as recorded with the noted exceptions or noted steps.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, you have a question?
No, I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is the 1041 regulations update revisions.
Are we going to have public comment?
Not,
Do we have-
not at this point. We're going to go straight into the work session first.
Referencing the 1041 regulation update, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we go to a study session with the director to talk about some of the questions that several of us have raised, so we can clarify that before we come back to consider motion.
Can I have a second on that?
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so you have the latest version you can bring up on the screen?
If I might just give maybe a little bit of background on this for some of the folks in the audience.
Can you pull your mic a little closer, please?
If I might give a little bit of background on this for some of the folks in the audience. They were asking just some general questions, so just kind of hit on the highlights here real quick. So Elbert County currently has 1041 regulations, and we're looking to amend and revise those, remove some sections and add other sections for all intents and purposes. These are rules and regulations that apply to matters of state interest, including what's proposed in the regulations are major utility facilities, major domestic water and sewer facilities, solid waste disposal sites, rapid mass transit, and around those general areas, as well as things that we currently have in our code include new communities that we're proposing that be removed. There was a let me back up. The process started, give or take, a year ago. We hired a consultant to help us with some of the details on that, and that they have worked on this project as well. We had an open house. We've had work sessions with the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. 2 weeks ago, we presented the 1041 regulations to the Planning Commission, and there were some questions and thoughts on how to adjust and change those regulations, which have been incorporated into the document on the screen. There are a variety of relatively minor changes, I think, overall to that. Got some fairly specific comments from 3 of the planning commissioners, so certainly appreciate that and making that a better document. From kind of the process of things is the Planning Commission gives a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners on zoning and 1041 regulations. So the kind of next step after the Planning Commission would be something that would go before the Board of County Commissioners. There were a variety, as I suggested, changes that were talked about from some of the planning commissioners. I'm happy to hit on some of those things that you might want to talk about if that is easier to do. We had changed the article number from 16 to 17 because we already had an Article 16 in our regulations. We added a table of contents as well to kind of help navigate through the document, thinking that would be something that's helpful. How would you best like to proceed in terms of addressing the comments that you had?
Well, there's some items that we have that we had submitted for changes, and you submitted some as well, Roger. And you've got some that don't show up. And okay, so if you would like to go through and show where the changes are, and what was done.
Okay.
And as we go through it, maybe we can address it at that point, or...
Okay. So there was a comment that was received about site selection for any new water storage reservoirs and how that was being described with surface area at high water line in relation to 50 acre feet, and that seemed confusing. So we took out about half that information and just left it the size of the reservoir at 50 acre feet. Hopefully that was addressing the intent of that. Under wind energy generation, acreage was something that was removed, and a determination in terms of how is that categorized. So how many turbines are being proposed? How tall are they? There was a question or comment about the minor or major in terms of the number of turbines, how tall they were, how much they were changing. There was a specific intent to not change that and not add in a specific number for minor or major, thinking that some of those factors may vary, and that Article M has...
I read Article M. It still doesn't give you the level of specificity that you need for some kind of determination between minor and major. That's where I was going with this. I appreciate the desire to be flexible, but I also recognize the fact that this is something that the permittee is going to use to figure out what they actually have to do in order to achieve their ability to meet the requirements. And for us, it's a gap, or for me, it's a gap. I'll speak for myself. You know, you want to have some level of specificity there. You want to be able to figure out what that looks like. And if you can take the things that are in Section M and, you know, muddy them down a little bit or clear them up a little bit and then put them into that section in the table, you actually get to the point where you're there. But I don't know that the level of specificity is there even in Section M.
Certainly, if you want to propose a certain number, we can add that in. We could add 4 through 7 and call that minor, and anything more than 7 is major, or whatever number you'd like to put to it.
The notes I sent you, I showed a couple different ways to think about it. One was that 4 to 7 routine. The other one was the land size coverage associated with, you know, how much space you would need for the wind turbines themselves. I don't know which makes more sense. Probably the number of turbines and probably the height associated with it. But to me, that's kind of was the missing link there. We need to be able to point that out better.
We can certainly adjust that.
What page are you on?
I was on the table. I'm actually jumping around because I'm looking at other stuff.
I think,
Say it was
Okay,
page
what-
5, I think, is the table.
Regarding,
If you look right here, this is what he's talking about.
yeah, right, okay, on this table right here.
It's just not specific enough.
So the section that we're looking at are the wind engine generation, or wind energy system that's accessory. It's one turbine with a hub height 80 feet or less. It'd be a simple permit. A small one would be 2 to 3 turbines. A minor 1041 would be more than 3 and up to whatever point you'd like to make that. If you want to do, so 4 to 7, great. Anything more than 7 would be a major one. Fine.
And I'm okay with that as a,
Okay.
Okay with that?
okay, one of the things that I had proposed regarding those sections where you're going through the application process and the, there's such a hodgepodge of the minor and major items. So you go back and forth in there and say, this applies to major only, this is minor and major. But what I would like to see in those sections is to split out and have a minor section, so everything that applies to minor is in that section, and then there's a major section after it, so that everything that is only for major is in that, but it also includes what's in the minor. So you can phrase that, but it's you're going back and forth, and it's piecemeal, where you've got some major items and you got some minor items. And I would like to see those sections split out so that they only have, so they have two sections, two subsections, one minor and one major. The readability of that would be greatly improved by doing that. If you're trying to sort through and find it, you're just going through and, well, this is minor, this is major, this is minor, this is major, and trying to see in a coherent way what it is. It's difficult when it's in a hodgepodge like that.
Which page are you on?
But we were talking about the sections for,
We have these tables up on the screen here, so I want to make sure that I'm understanding exactly where you're
well,
looking.
we've got the,
you're going into the section that's calling out what's minor, what's major, not these tables, but below
right,
page 13.
the tables refer to some of the stuff that's in there.
Yeah.
But, when you're talking with those sections, you're talking about the application process, you're talking about approving and issuing a 1041 permit, and the approval criteria. I mean, those different sections, let's see, we've got, let me go to the, you're pulling it from that particular one, but if you go to those sections, you'll see that you've got some that are major and some that are minor, and it's hard to follow it. Let me see if I can find it in my other notes here. I'll give you an example.
Can I bring up something while you're looking for that?
Sure.
Or unless you want me to wait, I can wait. It's not a big deal.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask real quickly about, I know they're probably handled someplace that I'm not familiar with, but two areas of risk that I was wanting clarification on, and that is in section J. The number heading is 2, and it's down in this section. It deals with financial burden or economic impacts. So the subsection would be 2. I think that's 1.
What page are you on, Dwayne?
You know what I'm talking about.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 17, please. on the red line.
You're going the wrong way. Correct, page 7.
Page 17 on the red line, sorry. Yeah, it's after the tables.
These documents have so many different ones in there.
Yeah. There you go. Financial burden on the county and local economy impacts. I know that these are for larger, major reviews, so I understand that those applicants would probably have more resources. Where I'm concerned about is it doesn't appear to be any language that puts the applicant on the hook for the expense of those studies if those studies are not sufficient. Where I'm getting at is some of the large players might give rosier pictures of impacts than what might really be there. And I don't know if there's other language that is addressing it. That's all I'm bringing it up for. I'm not thinking of specific wording or entering anything. But I think, number one, the risk area on that is that it needs to be defined in such a way that the county can bill back if they don't think that the information is sufficient. It goes into part of the cost.
That is a good question, and I'd be happy to kind of look into that a little more closely.
It might be under the indemnification sections or not indemnification, but it might be in the.
Yeah, let me think about that for
Okay.
for a minute or two here and kind of look through a couple things maybe while we're having some other.
Okay. I can go to my second one, and that's all I have.
I've got an example here. On approval criteria, section M, which in the red line is starts on 30.
Yes, sir.
You have areas in here like, it's listed as section 117 here, for example. That's applicable to major review only for that section. And then you have, going on a little bit farther in here, you have other areas that are applicable to major only as you're going through this. And those particular things that are related to major should be in a separate section below one for minor, because you go back and forth with that major minor, and I think that it makes a lot more sense to have 117 is major only. There's another one that's additional approval criteria applicable to major facilities, and it just is back and forth between minor and major through the whole thing. So to split it out and show what's major and what's minor in a section of its own makes a lot of sense. And if we could follow that.
So I think the answer.
Something else. I don't understand where that. I thought you'd broken that out.
You turn your mic.
Sorry. I thought you had already broken that out. What was major only?
Well,
At least on the red line.
we have. You have different sections and criteria
Yeah.
for all of the applications.
Right.
And then major only.
Right.
So the major only, they have to address all of these plus these extra ones. So if I might just interrupt real quick and go back to Dwayne's question about kind of the financial burden, if you will. That section, I think that the chair was noting that it's on page 30. Criteria 12, it looks like, on the red line version. It's applicable to major review only, that the proposed project will not create an undue financial burden on existing or future residents of the county. Some of the other kind of financial questions that roll into that, the proposed project is technically and financially capable, necessary expertise and financial capability to develop and operate the project. So I think that that addresses it to some degree. It may not be as direct as you were kind of suggesting. Might be able to tweak some of that language in there to be a little more specific, but I think that as a criteria, what that's trying to get at is, are they going to be able to do this? If they're not, then it may not be something that makes it viable. They'll have to adjust their finances to make it work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, all I'm addressing is not necessarily their financial ability, but more importantly, that when they give economic data, statistics, and research on their part, sometimes applicants can paint a rosier picture. And how do we protect ourselves and ensure we get better information if that is what's required? And having somebody pay for that data, the applicant pay for that data is good. It takes us off the hook for that expense, but it also means that we have to rely on their data. And I'm not sure that's always good. That's just
Dwayne, are you thinking over the life of the project, or after the product is in place and out there being maintained, right? So if it's during the life of the project, when you're putting windmills up or you're putting solar panels up, there's a certain amount of fiscal responsibility and liability that needs to be bonded for, and I think they've got that in there. But are you talking about after the fact?
No, I'm talking about, so if they have to supply economic data about what it's going to bring to the county, the project is going to bring to the county, or employment, they can provide their data. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but are we just going to let them provide that data? And if we don't feel that it's sufficient.
Let me interject real quick. What we have done on other applications, relatively large applications, or ones that require specific expertise, is we have all applicants sign a form that says they agree to pay for expert witnesses, if you will, on the county's behalf. So we would hire, for example, for like a metro district, we hire an attorney and we hire a finance expert to take a look through a metropolitan district to ensure that the county's interests are realized. And if not, then we are aware that it's X, Y, and Z. Are we willing to accept X, Y, and Z? And if we're not, they may need to change their plan.
That's sufficient for me. I just didn't see that here, and if it's in supplementary documentation or agreements, then I'm groovy with that.
Yeah, it is a matter of course for, I think, every application that we get.
Okay.
A land use application.
The second one, real quick, is regarding the environmental impacts, like water quality, surface water quality, and groundwater quality on page 18 of the red line version. Shouldn't these be referring to state regs or some body that has a deep experience and knowledge of what water quality means, or are we going to stipulate this breadth and scope in 3 items, or 4, or a handful? And I think it might be better just to refer to some regulatory body that has deeper experience on that. I'm not trying to weigh it down. I'm trying to make sure that we don't have to become experts. Well, we refer to water standards all the time and other things. We refer to state water. I got a little, soft for me as well, but if there's things that are, yeah, agreed. My view shed is not your view shed, right?
So the air quality one, number 1B, references the state air quality standards. It doesn't reference, federal air quality standards, but I would imagine that the state ones reference the federal ones, is my guess.
Like building codes, you know. And I'm not trying to weigh it down. I'm just trying to make sure that we don't have to keep those sections live where we're adding new stuff because we may have missed stuff.
Yeah, the surface water quality, section number 3, also references state water quality.
Okay, okay. Okay, forgive me, then I lost where that was at. Yeah. That's all.
Well, and Greg, again, those things are going to be changed from time to time. You look at the air quality standards and how they've changed over the years. So, I mean, it's best not to try to fully define exactly what's meant, but to again, refer to a federal or a state standard. Because then when those change, then that automatically changes. So.
From my standpoint, I feel comfortable with having that general nature that references those state quality standards.
I do too, because of that, because of the changes that are made, that can be made. You know, we're going to be changing this thing every year, so, yeah.
Don't want to do that.
Yeah,
No.
exactly. I'm comfortable.
I am too.
Peter, are you going to go into your example?
Okay,
There were a couple of other things, just while you're looking through there. There was a couple of dates that were not specifically identified. They were to be determined. What they were referencing was when the board approves these on that date type of thing. And I don't remember exactly the language, but it was essentially to be determined because they hadn't yet approved it. So we've anticipated the date that they might put that. We've put in a date here based on that. If that needs to change because they don't approve it on that specific date, we can adjust that as well.
So, Greg, I noticed that you're referenced 46 times in the document as CDS director. You're going to be a busy dude with each one of those, so just something to keep in mind, that some of this is calling out you specifically, and I'm hoping that it's calling out your office specifically. We talked about delegation earlier.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think that generally speaking, how that's done is I might have a specific sign-off. It'd be appropriate perhaps for me to sign off, but others perhaps have gathered that knowledge and information, or perhaps are working on that specific case. But they would bring that to me to ensure that it, you know, meets all the standards here, that we're on the same page essentially.
I think that's addressed because later in the most recent red line, it says CDS or designee. So.
Yeah, I was just looking at the ones where it specifically calls out CDS director only.
Okay, but later it clarifies that in any case that it says CDS director, it also says or designee, I think, under the definition. So I think
Perfect.
that's covered. It was covered under a recent modification, and I agree with that. But that I think it covers that. Is that where that came from, Greg?
Yes, I believe so, and I would have to go back and double check that, but I believe that that's true. Kind of where we're talking about CDS director and titles, we had in here a couple of different, or 2 or 3 different titles, and that was one of the catches that was made. It referenced planning director, director, and CDS director. So we tried to streamline all of those and call them CDS director is the, what they should all say now.
This is a nit on page 11, such as appropriate screening techniques, including landscaping. We could call that techniques, right? Just a nit.
I'm sorry, what number?
The red line on section, pre-application meeting, section 1A, last sentence.
Yeah. We'd like to spell techniques with more Q's next time.
I usually do, yeah. I told you it was a nit.
I'll see if I can find that.
good news is the planning commission's not mentioned in here very often.
Okay, right here. On the red, do you have the red line? Yeah. Okay, on page 42. C.
There was also some conversation previously about the word may versus shall, and kind of reordering some sentences so they read differently at the bottom of 14, excuse me. The county shall require a deposit for payment of consultant and referral agency review fees, kind of that earlier conversation, should the services be required. So if we need it, great, we'll get it. And if it's not needed, then we won't. And what we do is we get a signature from folks so that they agree to provide that if needed.
I think that was covered pretty well. I think you just mentioned something about may and shall, and I did still have one question on page, depending on what version we're on, page 9, under 1041 determination. See if I can find it in the red line. Under application process,
Determination meeting?
it says, under 1041 determination, meeting prior to the 1041 pre-application, blah, blah, blah. At the bottom of that page, it says, any person seeking to engage may meet with the CDS director, and I questioned that before. Is it may or shall? Are we giving the applicant the opportunity to have a meeting before submitting an application, or is he required to do that? You see what I mean, Greg?
Yeah, I do. I think I don't have any problem changing that. I think if it's evident that it's a major one, I don't know if we necessarily need to have that meeting, that we're going to come in, we're going to do 100 of this, or we're going to do something that exceeds our threshold significantly. Do we need to have that meeting to say, yes, you exceed it? I don't know. Something that's closer, great. I'm happy to change it, though. We can have it, be done with it.
You say you have the option for it, but do you want to?
I mean,
Shall or may?
I just want to know what your thinking was when you put that in there, because that's one of the only places that we have left in may as opposed to shall.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's that. It's, from my standpoint, if you're going to do 100 and the threshold is 7, you have to do it. And this meeting, it may or may not be a in-person meeting. It might be a phone call. It might be a Zoom meeting or something. And it's probably a less formal meeting, if you will, because we still have a pre-application meeting where we get a lot more details about that and go through code requirements and maybe ways to improve their application, or things in relation to the code that they may not have addressed or may not be aware of.
my reasoning behind that is, it could, if you determine that it's really not necessary, all you have to do is put a note in the file that says the applicant discussed it with you and you determined a further meeting was not required. But if we put in shall, it means that they have to come to you and talk to it, and then we have a note or minutes in the record so that when it comes to us, just like what Matt did earlier, when he would talk about the pre-application process, who was there, what comments were made, and if no comments were made, just a simple entry into the record that says that. I think that that's important, because if we don't do that, we leave it open to somebody saying, well, I just decided I didn't want to have a meeting.
Well, and you bring up a good point. If it's on the other side of the scale, if it's a particularly small one, it doesn't meet that threshold, or it's something that could be just a building permit. I'm fine doing that.
I have a question on the format. We got an email a few days ago that had two things. It called a clean copy, which had a certain formatted numbering system that seemed to make sense. Then we get back to the red line that came out just recently, and we're back to having numbers that go all the way up to 95 and whatever, instead of having that old format. Which format are we actually looking at?
Okay, that brings up a further question that I mentioned to you before the meeting. If you've got an old version of the red line that you put all this new red line stuff in, and it's not the new formatted one, how are you going to accept those red lines into the new document when they're two separate complete documents?
Yeah, I think that we need to have them side by side to ensure that they are all been incorporated in. You know, there's not so many red lines that we can't go through. I mean, you've got pages here where you have, 8 changes. It's
Okay,
not a dramatic change.
For future reference, it would have been easier to take the latest version of the document and do a red line in that of what the new information was that hadn't already been accepted. And then when it's accepted, it becomes part of the new document with proper format.
And I think the effort was to demonstrate, here's the questions that have come up from all the commissioners and represent all of those. So I think that was the point to that. I think that, just so you know, from our code standpoint, as we start looking to format this to put it into more code-numbered language, that it's likely to change again before that goes to the board. So I don't want to mislead anybody in terms of that. The consultant we had working on that had removed some of that stuff. So you'll see things that are more representative of the balance of like the zoning code or subdivision regulations.
Okay, I have one other thing here that I wanted to discuss. I had suggested removing the word significantly from the proposed project will not significantly degrade areas of paleontological, historical, or archaeological significance. But in that particular thing, you wiped the whole thing out. And to me, it's too subjective if you say significantly. What does significant really mean? So I think significantly should be removed from that. And also, it should state the proposed project will not degrade areas of paleontological, historical, or archaeological significance as defined by. So how do you define what is historic or what is archaeological importance or paleontological importance? So you've got to be able to define what those really are instead of just a name, because some people may define it a little bit differently. So there's got to be some standard in how that one is defined, but you can't delete the whole thing as it's showing in my red line. It's just as significantly, because that's too subjective.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a valid point. I misunderstood what you were telling me on the phone as you were letting me know about that.
Okay, and also, one of the other things that I had mentioned on the phone, and I had an indication that the commissioners would be willing to look at it, was a greater setback instead of a quarter mile, but a half a mile on wind energy or transmission lines.
Is a half a mile enough?
So they would be willing to look at it. I don't know if they will accept it, but I'd like to have that in the document going forward.
So it wouldn't be in this document. That's in our zoning regulations. And I'm sorry I don't have the exact site off the top of my head here, but did look that up after you mentioned it, and that is in another section of code, not the 1041 regulations. So I think that that's a valid point. We can certainly forward that along to the board with that suggestion if that's something that the Planning Commission wishes to forward to them.
There's areas in here that mention 1,325 feet setback. So,
is that the setback or is that the notice?
pardon?
Notice.
Was it noticed?
And that's what we do on every other application, is provide that notice requirement.
Even for that.
Is that enough?
I don't know.
The half a mile?
Yeah, a quarter mile is definitely not enough. Is half a mile enough on the wind?
Well, I don't
see
know
it
if,
beyond
yeah, I
5
don't know if
feet.
they'll accept a mile, but I think half a mile from any home, subdivision, or approved subdivision, unless they have permission from the landowner to be closer. So they'll have to negotiate with a landowner if it's closer to an individual home. But if it's a subdivision or a pre-approved subdivision that hasn't been built yet, it would have to be at least half a mile.
So I
That-
want to make, I
that-
want to make
that
sure I
puts a lot of
understand what's
restrictions on it.
being talked about. I think I'm hearing two different things.
You are hearing two different things.
There's a notice requirement in here that talks about a quarter mile. And I think what you've talked about is where can they be located in relation to these features? I think one
Exactly.
thing you said was if there's a house within a quarter mile, they can't be there. If there's a subdivision within a quarter mile, they can't be there. And that portion is in the zoning code. It talks about setbacks from subdivision. It doesn't say a specific house, it says a subdivision. And I don't have it memorized, but it's
Okay, well,
different than
when
the
you-
notice
When you're talking
requirement.
about the major and minor projects in here, I don't see any reason that we couldn't have that as part of the 1041 for those particular items.
Call them out specifically. I'm
I-
actually aligned with what he's saying. I think the setback should align to the notification as well.
I don't have any problem in particular with proposing to change it, but I don't want to have different rules and regulations talking about the exact same thing in two different documents. So if you want to change it, fine, come up with whatever distance you think is appropriate, and we can forward that along, but that would also mean that we have to make a change in the zoning code to accommodate that, so we don't have two different answers
Okay,
to
that
the
would be
same
fine.
question.
I mean, you know, to include it in here and then have to change the zoning, because we do that quarterly anyway.
Can I'm a little confused here. We're talking about a setback for what?
For solar, wind energy.
So if I put solar on my house, I've got to,
These are the major projects.
okay, that's what I was asking, major and minor, okay?
So I mean,
Because I can tell you this, okay, having
It's-
put up 50 windmills in this state, okay, if we had to have a mile setback, okay, it would never work.
no, we're not talking about that because that isn't defined in the 1041. The 1041, when you're looking at those, you're talking about much larger facilities. So it's only as contained in the 1041. It has nothing to do, and actually there's an exception in here for or an exception I was reading for it doesn't apply for the individual homeowner putting up one for their property.
Well, I
didn't catch
still
that.
think that you need to make sure that, as Greg said, okay, that you don't have two things.
Well, I totally agree, but I think it should start in here, and then if you have to change the zoning to reflect that on those two types of projects, if you look at everything we've heard from all the public, and I totally agree with the loss of property value when those things are close. So I think a half a mile is where we're at and what the commissioners would consider from what I have heard. I had proposed a mile, but I think that's probably more than what they would agree to.
Greg, can you figure out what might be reasonable there?
I would offer a couple of thoughts. One is, I believe it was at our work session that we had a conversation about this, work session with the board and the planning commission, and I believe there was conversation about this, and that there was some interest in keeping consistency and I think it was for the notice, actually, as I'm talking about that. I think it was the notice rather than the setback. You can propose whatever you'd like to propose and let the Board of County Commissioners hear what you think is important. If that's important to change it and change it to pick a number, half mile, fine. I think I would be clear about what you're measuring from. A subdivision has a greater impact because there are more people there than one house. I think it's worth noting that you have concern about it. It's worth noting that we have other sections of our code that would need to be adjusted as well. And, throw that to the board. It's their job to make those final decisions and your job to make recommendations to them.
Okay.
So if that's something that you guys are supportive of, by all means.
Where in here would you put the recommendation for the half a mile? On those two types, both solar facilities and transmission lines.
Well, not just transmission line, but
The high energy transmission lines that we're talking about.
the wind energy generation and the solar section.
So it would be either the minor or major under wind energy. You could put it in the table there, and also in the solar energy under the, or not solar energy, okay, wind energy and the high energy transmission lines. Do we have a table on that one, Mayor?
You asked a question about where it should be located. I think it's probably within the criteria portion.
Table 13,
And that's, starts, I think, on 29.
table 4, page 13.
Page 13.
It's, M is the approval criteria. Somebody said page 13. There.
Yeah, I don't see a table for the,
Yeah, I would.
Oh, here you go, table 4. Somewhere around page 13 or 14, depending on
I
what.
was just looking at table 4.
Here.
I think that we could put something in that table if you'd like. And maybe it's different minor for major. You guys could kind of make your choice on that. And if it needs to be elsewhere within the document as well to be supportive of that, the criteria or something, I'm happy to, sit down with our consultants and or Bart and try to figure out the best additional spot for that if we need to do something in addition to table 4.
Okay, so just the two then. It's the major and minor wind energy and the major and minor,
Solar.
no, the transmission lines, the electrical transmission lines, a high,
Anything with height,
pardon?
anything with height,
What?
anything with height.
Yeah.
Actually, similar to what Excel is talking about, putting in that type of a transmission.
So what I heard was solar, wind, and electrical transmission lines.
Yeah, less concerned about the solar, more concerned about the wind and the exchange, or the high.
Solar could be an issue depending on how big the site is, so maybe all three of them are half a mile from.
No, I got a real problem with putting a solar plot, but a half a mile from from wherever, okay? It doesn't work.
A major, not from somebody that is putting it in personally. This is,
Still, it doesn't matter,
this
okay?
is a major or a minor 1041, which is,
I understand what you're saying, okay? All right? But even a major, okay, you're not going to get anybody to put it in here because they can't buy that much land to put solar in. It doesn't work that much. It doesn't work, okay? I'm looking at it from an economic standpoint of getting somebody out here, okay, to do that if they're going to do it, okay? Because one of the things that we will need in the future is energy. And I've put up solar farms too, so I know what it takes and what it needs. Solar farm you don't see. Wind, yeah. Towers, yes.
okay, I would accept that.
Are you thinking for both major and minor, or just major for these, for the half mile? And I'm kind of interpreting what you're saying here.
Well, if you're talking major and minor stuff typically is just a start, and then it gets added to and becomes bigger. I mean, so if you're going to do something like that, I think it's both minor and major on there for those.
Generally speaking, we try to discover what folks are interested in doing from, a phase 1, 2, 3 type of thing. So we understand the length and breadth of what they're doing, so we can give them good direction on what they're going to do.
When you're looking at a minor on that, you can equate it to like what people were doing with the subdivisions, where they would do a minor and then another minor and then another minor, and it became a big one. So we had to change our regulations to handle that. So when they kept doing one after the other, minor, 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 minor. So I mean, if you're looking at it from that perspective, it could grow. So I would say both minor and major with the half a mile on those two items.
And I would argue that if they're within that distance, a half mile, where they put the minor and now they'd like to add another minor to that, and it becomes a major, that they would not be able to locate there. So that would be, that's why they need to be upfront with what they want to do, so we can give them good direction up front.
Well,
But
we've seen it before, but,
sure.
I think if we do both minor and major, then we don't have to have an issue with it in the future. If a minor is added to and becomes a major, then it's not already too close.
And is half mile the right distance?
Pardon?
Is half mile the right distance?
I would like to see it more, but I don't think the commissioners would consider anything more than half a mile from what I've heard. So half a mile is more than it is right now, and I think that's a step in the right direction.
Submit it and see what they say.
As a group, are we thinking it's okay? And I'm looking at Van and Dwayne. Are we aligned as a group on?
I do not feel that half a mile is sufficient, is reasonable, okay, because of the cost of land.
We're not talking solar.
What? I'm not talking about solar, I'm talking about wind too, okay? Half a mile is a long way, and that means that person that puts it up has to buy that land in between.
Or just get an easement for it. Depends on how they work it out.
I don't, again, like I said, I've put up windmills, okay, and I know what it takes, and I know how much room it takes. And half a mile is too far. Quarter of a mile, okay.
So you can put it up a quarter mile from a subdivision.
A quarter of a mile is a long way.
It's one section away.
Yeah.
And that's not very far.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not. I mean, I look
Why,
at,
what does a section of land cost?
well, it depends on where it's at.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, but I'm not in favor of that.
Okay, that's fine.
Dwayne, what are your thoughts?
I would prefer it to be a formula based on size, whether it's visual height objections to having, I don't want it near me at all, but what are the objections to a windmill, for example, or even a large power station? What are the objections? Is it that it's visual? Is it because it's unsafe? Is it because, what is it? And
Basically, we're talking about a wind energy farm,
I'm sorry.
a wind energy farm.
Yes.
You know, like you see across
Yep. Oh, I know.
Eastern Plains where you see, at night you can see the whole skyline with lights flashing.
I can see them down the dirt road.
Right.
I look to alignment.
And then we're talking about the high energy transmission lines, the big tall ones that go through.
Yep.
And at the moment, there's not much of a setback for it.
Yeah.
And if it's basically doubling the setback on those two types, because the major complaint people have is being able to see them.
Let's solve this, okay? Greg, you can bring this up to the commissioners and see what they,
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're trying to do, is kind of ferret these things out as much as possible.
the choice, half a mile, quarter of a mile, and see what they say.
Yeah.
Well, they will. They will. And whatever we put in there, they
Yeah,
can
they're gonna
modify
put it
it.
in, no, I understand that.
Is there anything else that anybody else has? Specifically?
I want to say that I really did appreciate getting the comments from the commissioners. It was something that I felt made the document stronger, more consistent. You know, I just told Matt, I kind of wish we had this conversation about 3 months ago, but, you know, that didn't happen. That's okay. Next time we do something like this, you know, it's kind of a more major heavy lift for a code section. Maybe we would do it just a little bit different than we did this time, but wasn't necessarily wrong. It just would have helped to have maybe some more detailed conversations about these, you know, words.
In the past, I remember
These words
having work study sessions with the commissioners where all the planning commission was there, the commissioners were there, and as well as the CDS staff, and being able to mull this over and talk about it and go through it, and not even maybe just in one session, maybe in a couple sessions. So, I mean, that's something that works very well.
Yeah, and I think we did that one time, and I think it was more of a 10,000-foot view. It didn't get into the weeds a little bit. And, you know, the weeds is, you know, where the rubber hits the road. Maybe too many analogies, but nonetheless.
A mixed metaphor?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so with the recommendations that we've made right now, is there anything else that somebody else wants to add? Okay, so I would entertain a motion to end the work study session and go back to a regular session.
Are you referring to it as agenda item 2022-1581 or by its topic?
No, it's just coming out of the work
The
session.
1040 regulations update and revisions, which is item D on the list. Item D on the list for the agenda, we just moved it into a work session. And now we need to go back out of the work session into the regular meeting schedule so we can make a motion on what we've done. So I would entertain a motion to go back to the regular meeting out of the work session, or end the work session and go back to the regular meeting.
I'll move that we end the work session and return to the regular session concerning 1041 regulations.
Okay. Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now, my question is, are we going to get another draft? I don't want another draft. How are we going to determine what we're doing here?
Well, I think everything is in there in the red line, except for what we just talked about tonight. So,
In the red line that came out in the email, was it today or yesterday?
It was today.
okay,
The
so
latest.
we made some changes to the red line. And so with the changes to the red line, and our recommendations that we've got now for that, I would entertain a motion to approve that to go on to the BOCC with all the recommendations that we have made tonight, as well as what's in the red line.
Okay, Greg, when it goes to the commissioners, what format is it going to be in? Is it going to be in this format of the red lines that were just submitted, or the one that was called a clean copy a week ago?
My expectation is it would be a clean copy that would go to them. I'm happy to ask them how they would like to see it. My expectation is they need and want a clean copy. If they're interested in seeing some of the changes that were made by you all, I'm happy to give that to them as well. So however they might want the information, I'm happy to do that. I think there's some, kind of dotting the I, crossing the T types of things here. Get rid of planning, make it CDS director. They don't care about that. Here's something that's kind of significant. Should we change that to a half mile or not? That's something that there's been some, dissension on the board. Those things I think I'd want to call to their attention a little bit more.
Right, but when this goes to them, they're going to either adopt it or deny it in the format that it's given to them. And that's been confusing to me as we've gone through this process.
So I would say that they would not approve the red line version. We wouldn't want to have in our document redlined this instead of that or whatever. So ultimately, those red lines would come out and they'd have a clean copy that would get codified.
Okay. Can we, when you prepare the packet that goes to commissioners, can we get a copy of what you're sending so that we have an opportunity to look at it in case one of us wants to go to the commissioners meeting to present anything different than what we think we've talked about? Is that reasonable?
That's reasonable. I think we need to be able to see the results of what we did tonight actually get to the commissioner. So if you've got a clean copy that you're going to put that all in, I think we'd like to have that clean copy as well.
Yeah, I'd be happy to send that along to you.
Okay, thank you. Is that good enough for you? Okay. Now, in this particular case, since we're back into a regular meeting, and we had previously heard this and we had closed public comment. If you're here to make a comment about this particular issue, I would be willing to open it up for public comment for just a moment if you would like to.
We need a motion to open that.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we reopen the public comment portion of the hearing concerning the 1041 regulations.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Would you state your name and address first, please?
Yes, I'm Carrie Giblets. I live at 19656 Wiedemeyer Road in Kiowa. And I just wanted to commend all of you for the time and consideration that you're putting into these revisions. I know it's not easy. I know that you have a lot of things to consider, and we're sitting back here being very heartened by what you've been saying and the things that you're considering. The one thing that I had noticed when I looked through the red line was the quarter-mile setback, and that was something that was really important to me. So a mile would be amazing, but a half mile, it's better. A quarter mile, sir, is my driveway. And if you were to put a wind turbine at the end of my driveway, I think I'd have to move. A quarter mile is nothing out here. A quarter mile in Denver is blocks, but for us it's nothing, especially when we can see wind turbines and we can see transmission lines for miles and miles. So thank you so much for taking the time and really considering this. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
I move we close the public comment session.
We've got one more.
I'm just going to say basically Jill Adair and 19724 Wiedemeyer Road in Kiowa. Also, I just wanted to say the same thing, that thank you guys for putting all this work into it and taking it. Obviously, you guys have really listened to everything we've been saying, because you're feeding that right back and saying that these are the things that we've been fighting so hard for. I mean, we love it where we live, and the turbines do, I know that they produce a lot of money for the county and the taxes, and I understand all of that, but when you've lived here your whole life and have worked at making a beautiful environment for yourselves, and to know that, I mean, yes, half a mile isn't going to fix it, a mile wouldn't even fix it, it'd have to be 20 miles, but just getting it out of our driveways, yeah, is, because the same thing, it's a quarter of a mile is our driveway too, and so just thank you so much for listening to everything we've been working so hard to put out there, and just considering that, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I move we close the public comment section of the meeting.
Close the public comment. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to close public comment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so I would we've got the motion now to go forward with this, with all of our,
Okay, relative to item D on our agenda tonight, the review of the 1041 regulations update and revision, which has been continued from the July 5 meeting, I move that we recommend and we forward the amended 1041 regulations with our recommendation for approval to the county commissioners, subject to our body receiving a clean copy of that document as it will be forwarded. And the copy, the final copy that's transmitted to the commissioners reflect the comments that were made tonight based upon the red lines, several red lines that we've received and discussed in the last two meetings.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. I think we're all done for tonight. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Huh? A motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for coming and sticking through it all. Others left, but you stayed. I appreciate that.